When you partner with Axon, you immediately gain access to a full range of products and solutions designed to meet the complex needs of today's grower. We carry all major brands and sizes of tires and wheels. We specialize in large diameter wheels for large equipment. We have one of the largest OEM replacement wheel inventories in North America. Known for extreme flotation setups, duals, and triples, we have wheels for all makes and models of tractors, sprayers, combines, and grain carts. If we don't have the wheel in stock, we'll custom build, sandblast, and paint in-house. There isn't a more vast inventory in North America dedicated to helping dealers move more iron. With facilities on the West Coast and in the heart of the Midwest, leverage our 230,000 square feet of indoor inventory to solve any problem a grower may have. Move more iron with Axon.
Moving iron.
Hello and welcome to Moving Iron Podcast Markets with Shawn Hackett. Shawn Hackett is Hackett Financial out of Boca Raton, Florida. It's nice to come on and talk about what's happening in the overall marketplace. So, Shawn, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing good, Casey. Very, very good. Lots going on.
Lots of good stuff going on, man. I'll tell you what. Let's hit on the easy one first, I guess. We got all this. You put an article out, our newsletter out on Monday, and it kind of hit some highlights. But basically, the overwhelming theme of your newsletter was, hey, we got geopolitical pressure right now. We're going to see some upside ticks to the grain market. And no more than I read that, the markets opened up and it sure took off and ran. So I think yesterday we ended up with about 32 cents on corn and I don't know how much on soybeans, but it was, quite a bit up. So we're looking from where we were at, bouncing around about $4.97, 96 cents on nine. Well, I guess I got down to $4.90 there for a minute too, but over about 3-week period here, we've jumped up almost 75 cents or so, roughly, on the corn price as well as on the soybean price, I guess. So, looking at that, that's what we see right now. We're seeing that weather scare and geopolitical scare at the same time.
Yeah, and I mean, nobody can forecast every chess piece move in geopolitics. It's impossible. Yeah. I don't know what the headlines are going to be later today, tomorrow. Could be bearish, could be bullish, could be limit up, could be limit down. We've seen this before. But it does appear that there's a strategic shift. We went from a year ago, Ukraine's offline. We had this grain corridor deal. Russia allowed this grain to come out. They were hoping that goodwill would bring some kind of a resolving negotiation to what they want. It didn't. And I think they're now saying, well, being a nice guy, relatively speaking, didn't work, then we're going to put the screws on, create some food inflation, to create some extreme pressure on the global geopolitics of food shortages, to force the West to come to the table and legitimately negotiate a settlement. And a negotiation means Russia will get something out of this. It can't be Russia gets nothing, we get everything. And I think they're going to continue to put pressure on until the pain of high food and inflation and food shortages gets to a point where the leaders see the wisdom in trying to de-escalate this. There'll be a lot of ups and downs along the way, but I think once Russia gets something, a concession from the West, that's when this can calm down. I don't think we're there yet, but I think that they are will push this as hard as they have to. Their view is now being a bad guy is the only way to get them to come to the table, and we'll see how far it has to go. I can't tell you how far it will have to go, but this is what I will say. Given all that uncertainty of what it could mean or not mean, where we are at is the grain corridor deal was not renewed, which is in and of itself not necessarily the end of the world, because in the last year, Ukraine has developed channels to move grain through land and to move the grain through the Danube River without any Black Sea travel. The problem is Europe doesn't want that anymore from the land because it's impacting their own agricultural players, meaning they are going to push back on that. I believe as of September 15th, they're not going to allow exports to come in to many countries from Ukraine through those channels, or it's going to be severely restricted. So that channel is going to be substantially reduced. And now, of course, Russia's bombing the Danube assets, the ports, the ag infrastructure there, because they know as long as they can get stuff through the Danube, it really doesn't put pressure on the West.
Right.
So if the Danube really gets shut down, as it appears to me that Russia is intending to do, then you have Ukraine, what I call checkmated, meaning they're checkmated. They can't get the grain out. Winter is coming, and then you have a pretty you have a very difficult situation on your hands in Ukraine, and the lack of that bread basket getting out to the rest of the world. And the markets appropriately responded, rationally responded with a limit up move in wheat and big moves up in grains. And it's possible, that the West and NATO could retaliate and try to impede Russia's exports, because they know Russia needs those exports to raise capital. They could try to retaliate and prevent Russia from getting their grain exports out, which would be another level of urgency. So this is the chess match that's being played, Casey. I don't think we're at the end of it. There's going to be ups and downs and rounds, but if you're in the livestock business, if you're a dairy producer, if you're a hog producer, if you're a cattle producer, if you're an ethanol producer, if you're a biodiesel producer, I would be thinking about how to protect upside price risks in case this thing gets out of hand, and it could get out of hand. We don't know for sure, but the risk to those, if you're in that business and this thing gets out of hand and you have to buy and you have to chase $8, $9, $10 corn or whatever ultimately this is, you're out of business in some of these cases.
Right.
So to me, you have to protect that. Now, if you're a grain producer and you don't have a lot of you haven't sold anything yet, once again, you don't know when this could end. It could end at any moment, and all of a sudden it's hard down from it. You need to feed the market, meaning you need to scale in sales into the market, because you can't predict the top in a geopolitical situation.
Right.
Soundbite could come out at any second and do one thing or the other. But my opinion is that if you're someone that's very undersold as a grain producer, you need to be feeding the market. You need to be rewarding the market, knowing full well we don't know where the top is, and don't stop trying to predict it, because we can't predict geopolitics. So, that's really where I think you have to protect where you are at risk. A grain producer's risk is this thing ends in a couple of days out of nowhere, and we're back to $4.90 corn, and that's not a good price for you. $5.60, $5.50, $5.75. I mean, that's not the best price we ever saw, but it's a heck of a lot better than $4.95 where we just came from.
Yeah.
So you have to take care of where the market could hurt you. A grain producer gets hurt if this thing resolves quickly and we'll go back to $4.95. A livestocker gets hurt, this escalates, and we go a heck of a lot higher. Protect the direction that hurts you the most. In the least, if you're a grain producer, think about using some option strategies to protect downside price risk if you're uncomfortable making cash sales. Meaning, if you're worried about your crop, maybe your crop's not looking so good, at least do that. Do something here, because we just can't predict what's going to happen from one day to the next.
Absolutely. Yeah, and then you throw the weather market stuff on top of that, and what you see there. And Russia's made it pretty clear that they're going to continue, like you talked about, just to put the hammer down on everything they can. And look what I get. Europe's point about what they're doing with Ukraine, because if you take a look at what's happened with Polish grain prices since they've been pushing stuff out, I mean, it's just flooded the market in those areas that typically wouldn't see that amount of grain come through.
Look, everyone is going to protect their self-interests, and those Eastern Bloc EU countries that have been, as you said, decimated by this flood of Ukraine grain, they're going to push back and say, look, we understand you have an issue, but at the same time, we're going to watch out for our best interests first.
Sure.
And then when our best interests are taken care of, we'll take, as we all like to think that we're all in this together. It's all for one for all. But at the end of the day, you're going to take care of your self-interest first. That's what countries do. And right now they're pushing back, and they're going to continue to push back on that, at least for now, until something changes with whatever's going on. But that's, that is a trend that's been building, and that pushback is coming. It's absolutely happening, and they're going to prevent that from happening, at least for a while. And that's going to put, like I said, put Ukraine in a very, very uncomfortable box. And if they can't sell their grain, or they can only sell their grain at 50%, below the market or something stupid like that, they're out of business. They're not going to plant next year's crop. I mean, they're not going to have the finances to produce next year's crop. And that's the bigger risk here, is if this gets pushed too far for too long, and those that have been able to continue to survive, throw their hands up and say we're done, then you have a longer term problem with Ukraine production being offline for a much longer period of time, depending how all of this plays out. I'm hoping for the best, but you have to prepare for the worst at this point.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. All right, Shawn, let's jump over and talk a little bit about what's going on over in the energy market. Oil has for whatever reason, decided to jump out of the mid 70s and work its way up to 80. And it's been stuck in that 75 to 70, maybe slightly below 70, like 68-ish range for months. It just seems like it's just been bouncing back and forth there. And yesterday it closed almost at $80. So I guess what's going on in oil, and why do we see such a big spike up there?
Well, I mean, obviously, if the Russia, Ukraine, and NATO and West is getting more uncertain, there's a potential that the energy coming out of Russia could be impacted. We don't know that for sure, but there's a risk. So we're putting on some geopolitical risk, given how important Russia is to, the global oil price. So that's the first thing. The second thing is we actually have been seeing some better demand coming out of China. If you look at, for example, we just got dairy imports for the month of June, July. They were up strongly. We know that some of the recent readings of imports of crude and natural gas have been up substantially. It looks like maybe, this slow rebound from the post-COVID situation is maybe we're finally starting to get some, improvement in demand here. Of course, China being extremely important to the global oil price. So I think those two things combined are allowing this oil price to kind of break out of that, $70, $75 range that we've been in, and maybe poke its head up closer to 80 for now. And then the market will take another look to see how everything plays out.
Yeah. Okay. All right. As you look through what we see happening with crop progress reports, you're starting to see some folks out there turning their heads and saying, maybe this limited rainfall and this heat we have is worth talking here a little bit about, and we're going to go ahead and lower our predictions. You're starting to see the 1 bushel a week chip away that you see when these kind of things start happening. So, we've talked about that pretty extensively on here. As you take a look at what's going on in the time frame we're moving into, Shawn, talk a little bit about some of the weather predictions that you see out there and some of the patterns you see and develop.
Well, we know we're going to have some pretty extreme heat this week. That's been advertised for a while, and that's happening. Weather is never constant. There's always some give and take, and that usually when you get some extreme heat like this, the atmosphere withdraws just because it's hard to maintain that kind of extremism. So I think that the heat's going to back off here, and then we're going to get another surge of heat. So the way we are kind of seeing it, high heat, into the early part of August, a backing away from the heat, and then a resurgence of the heat in the middle of the month. There is some rainfall. We've highlighted this is not going to be May, June, no rainfall, zero zip. It's going to be some rainfall, not like crazy rainfall, not necessarily above normal rainfall. It's still going to be below normal, but there's going to be some rainfall that will fall sporadically throughout the different regions. So this is not a, hot and absolutely no rainfall. This is hot with some rainfall. So that does push back a little bit on how much degradation we would see for corn and soybeans. But in aggregate, the weather pattern that we see with warmer and below normal rainfall does suggest we should chip away at some yield here into the later part of August. And then, of course, we have this USDA report coming out here, in a few weeks. and they're going to take another stab at what they think the yields are going to be. The key will they be comfortable enough to lower soybean yields at all? Will they be comfortable in doing more on corn? Will they stick with corn? That'll be the debate, and the big driver beyond geopolitics is trying to game the system on what the USDA will say next on yields. But right now, a hotter, drier pattern definitely puts pressure on the potential for some downward trend in yields heading into August and certainly heading into September USDA reports.
Right on. Okay. Kind of hit everything that I had up there, Shawn. Anything out there floating around in your head that you think we should let people know about?
The only other thing that I would pay attention to is that we've been watching this Brazilian real trade a sideways trading pattern for probably 5-6 years now. Mm-hmm. If you look at it, we're developing this triangular coiling pattern for 5 or 6 years, but just kind of coiling. And we're now been rising to the upper end of a narrowing triangular pattern. Anybody who follows the correlation between the Brazilian real and ag prices knows that typically if the real starts to rally strongly, ag prices tend to inflate here in the U.S. because of it depresses prices in South America, prevents them from wanting to sell, and increases our competitiveness. So I keep an eye on that chart. I think it looks to me like we're going to break out sooner rather than later. If we were to break out and we get a big rally in the market, that would be another fundamental, Casey, that we haven't seen that happen since the 2000s. The period from 2000 to 2010 was the last time that we had an uptrending real inflating U.S. prices. If you got like a 20 or 30% move in the real, corn prices or soybean prices or sugar prices or coffee prices could rally 15, 20% with no change in the fundamentals, just on the change in the currency translational effects. And given how prolific Brazil is in selling all these markets, that's a big thing if this breaks out. It hasn't done it yet. So I don't want to say that, jump on that, but
right.
It's something to really watch here. And the closer you get to the end of the triangle, Casey, the more likelihood you're going to get a breakout potentially. So we're looking for that. If we see that, we're going to be really highlighting that and adding that to our inflationary commodity scenario for agriculture heading into 24, which ultimately we think is going to happen. But when it does happen, it could be an accelerant to this U.S.-based commodity inflationary cycle that is driven by currency that we haven't seen in a while. So that's something definitely to keep your eye on, because it's a big factor that we haven't had in our favor for a long time.
Yeah, you did talk about that the other day about the ag inflationary aspects of stuff that you start seeing. So, okay. Well, Shawn, good stuff as usual. Folks want to reach out to you and get more information about what's happening over at Hackett Financial. What's the best way to do that?
Our website is Hackett, HACKETT, advisors.com. Our Twitter page is at FerretX11. We from time to time post stuff on there and interviews and things that go over what we do and how we do it to see if our way of looking at the world in agriculture would be of value to your listeners.
Right on. Well, Shawn, I appreciate you being on the podcast, and thanks for all the detail that you put into this stuff.
I appreciate it, Casey. Thanks for the opportunity.
Right on. I'm Casey Seymour with Moving Iron Podcast. Check me out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Moving Iron LLC, LinkedIn at Moving Iron Podcast, and go see the video version over on the YouTube channel, which is the Moving Iron Podcast YouTube channel. Go to Moving Iron LLC for everything Moving Iron related. Got just a few spots left for the Moving Iron Summit coming up here in Nashville, Tennessee. So if you're interested in checking that out, go to the website and sign up there, or if you need more information, send me an email at MovingIronPodcast@MovingIronPodcast.com. So with that, I am Casey Seymour. We're Shawn Hackett. Let's go smart, folks. Out. Let's see.
Moving iron in the 21st century. Hard work.